means, as far as I or ego, you've got to check the mind. You've got to think about yourself. There's this self-reflective consciousness that plays out, that objectifies the totality, limits it to an idea or image of who we are. And this is what the mind does. It's heavily, heavily conditioned to do it by millions of years and by society and everything to take on this role. So, but investigation can reveal that, most of the day, most of the time, we aren't even aware of ourselves. We forget to check the mind or look in the mirror, and there is no sense of ego in those moments. There's no sense of time either. There's just, we're absorbed in the moment, we're absorbed in some activity. There's no story, there's no judging, there's no, any of it. Or if thinking is playing out, it might be playing out impersonally, passively. Yeah. There's a distinction some teachers make between the active mind and the passive mind. Yeah. The active mind is, well, this is my thought, I'm thinking this. And the passive mind is more impersonal, it's just playing out. There's just these thoughts, that are just kind of going through, but they don't stick anywhere. There's no one, no I, taking delivery. And ultimately, the active mind is, that's the identification. That's the, well, I'm doing it. That's the doer again. I'm thinking this. I'm seeing. If they're seeing, it must be me who's seeing. If there was 10 minutes walking down the path where there was no I thought and no separation and no suffering, but then thinking about it later, well, I must have been there. It was me. And you're not even there. There's no I there. So there's no I to recognize its own absence. There's no I to recognize its own presence. And yet there is presence. There is the absolute presence or awareness, even when the I is not. The self, capital S, without self, is walking down the path for 10 minutes or peeling potatoes or whatever that is. We're not aware, or we would be bumping into stuff. So the I comes in and says, I wasn't present, I wasn't there. Well, that's ridiculous. You are presence itself, awareness itself. Self without self.
So the suffering comes from taking those claims of the mind to be true, the false claims of the mind.
And it arises with the identity, with the sufferer.
He did this, she did that. That's part and parcel, right? If there's an I, then there's another.
There's another, yeah.
So yeah, it's sort of like, well, the mind makes a false claim as to its nature, as to someone else's nature. Well, who says so? Well, I do. Well,
who are you?
Who am I? Or what am I? Or where am I? Those are the,
Who's that little man on the stairs? And why won't he go away? And what can we do to get rid of him? But if he is non-existent, made up, and imaginary to begin with, do we need to do anything to get rid of him? If we recognize or see clearly that I or ego or self is all in imagination, is all made up, is non-existent. Anything we do to get rid of it would just make it more real, would affirm its existence, that it really is a problem, that it really is I. Yeah. I've got to get rid of my ego. Yeah. I've got to get rid of the little man.
The phantom of the soap opera.
What you resist persists. Yeah. So we've all got our little man who appears when he does. And when he does, what do we do about it? Spiritual practice, this, that, or the other thing, or, the direct path again, Atman-Vichara, self-inquiry, is to, who is this? Who is this guy? And is it really I? Or is it just a false self, a false even sense of self, a contraction in the moment which comes and goes and appears and disappears in awareness, in ever-present non-dual awareness, consciousness. It doesn't even have to be aware of itself to be aware. It just is aware. It's just seeing. In one of Buddha's most direct teachings, he said, in the seeing, just the seen; in the hearing, just what's heard; in the cognizing or thinking, just what's cognized. There is no separate self, or seer, or observer thereof. So he's pointing to this direct experience, that even now there is a clear seeing happening, that is registering all the sounds around you, and all the sights, and all the forms, without judging, without comparing, without identifying, without having a story about any of it. It's registering it all. That mind, or the conscious mind, the I thought, might say, well, I'm not aware of these things, but you are. You're actually, consciousness itself is registering all the sounds, the birds and the boat, but without judging it. And in that awareness, consciousness, there's individual identity that comes and goes, that pops up. And, the I thought again. I don't like that sound, or whatever it is. And again, what do you do about it? Well, you see it clearly. There's nothing to do about it if you see it clearly. If you know it is non-existent, if it's not really self. It's not self. I don't recognize that I'm not there if I don't look. until someone points it out. That, hey, you're not there. You don't have a story, really. It's just, you know, if you don't look, it's not there. Your story's not there if you don't look. You know, she's nodding her head. Because, you know, she's in a moment of recognizing, you know, what a relaxation who we are without our stories. Without that whole, whatever it was you were speaking of earlier and have spoken of thousands of times, it just ain't here right now. And this is satsang. This is the truth. We're speaking the truth rather than speaking, constructing, supporting, reinforcing the story.
The story could be, I want a cup of tea.
Yeah.
That's the story.
It doesn't matter. I mean, if it has juice in it, you know, we know when there's an I in it.
Yeah.
Like you said earlier.
Yeah.
Between the distinctions of just thoughts that are just floating and not sticking, you know, and a story that has the emotional juice to it and the energy, you know.
And even the emotional juice and energy is ultimately playing out in this impersonal awareness. So ultimately, you know, 1 or 2 or 3 removes, there is no one taking delivery of that either.
Yes.
So even a lot of drama can play out. And I want a cup of tea. Damn it. You know, and there's no one taking delivery of that either. You know, it's happening to no one. There's no one doing it. It's just consciousness at play again.
And there's no one taking delivery, or whether or not there's a knowing that there's no one taking delivery of it. You go down to the sanctuary, it appears there's a lot of taking delivery of a lot of stories down there. You know, the way that you see people having chats with one another, but there's nothing going on down there either.
There's nothing going on. There's nothing going on anywhere.
Yeah, there was this whole thing happening, and yeah, it was in, like, I don't know, it seemed really good at the time.
And was there any identity or separate self that had a problem with that happening at the time also?
No, it was
just happening?
Yeah.
Well, that's freedom.
Just remembering that what you were saying, it seemed like I was in that serious talk of it.
Again, if it isn't happening for someone,
it was quite
if it isn't your drama, it's just freedom. It's just freedom. It looks like, you know, it might look like whatever it looks like from the outside, because freedom isn't limited by what it looks like or anything. It's expressing all of it. Oh, of course, it's juicy.
I was like,
where you feel, am I ever going to be able to stop having these present moments? Do you ever fill up? Do you ever say,
wow,
stop?
So the inquiry, who needs it? Who needs it to ever stop?
Exactly.
Did you just, you know, did some?
I guess
that thought is also the thought floating in consciousness.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, my brain's going to explode. Yeah, exactly. So I guess you're always fulfilling your present moment, and I think that's where the human mind, to a certain degree, tries to limit it because it feels like infinity.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
There are limitations in life, obviously, but who we truly are isn't limited by those limitations. So yeah, every moment we are fulfilling our destiny. There is a fulfillment that is every moment. Every moment as it is complete in itself as it is. It is a perfect expression of the divine as it is. That's the clear seeing again. It's a perfect nuance of the totality as it is.
Yeah.
And there's different nuances, each one complete in itself, moment to moment to moment. That's the clear seeing again. So again, what does it look like? You know, it looks like it does. Perfect. There's no better or worse, no higher or lower, because this is it.
Yeah.
This is always it. This is the totality, expressing as however it's expressing, as everything that's happening. Simultaneously, nothing happening at all.